registered.
Cool. Nice.
Good morning. Welcome, everyone. It is a little bit earlier this month that we're doing our social media updates, and we will be taking a summer break in August. So we're going to do a roundup today of what's been happening in the world. And no doubt by the time we reconvene on screen in September, there'll be loads for us to talk about. But as a reminder, there will be updates. There is every day. So you can always follow myself and Andy and our newsletters and our social media posts for regular updates of what's happening. But this is our regular month update. So yeah, that's a good reminder. I've seen your slides. We need to introduce ourselves because we're terrible at this bit, aren't we? And we realised, I will say, for those of you that joined us in London last week for a meetup, thank you so much for coming along. Sorry we couldn't fit everyone in with the room capacity. We weren't really expecting to have a wait list and more people than we could accommodate, but it was amazing and almost, I think, overwhelming, Andy, that everyone was like, they knew who we were and they watched this thing, and we just think we're having a chat as we were before we forgot to go live again. But yeah, a huge thank you to everyone that came along last week. So if we haven't met before and you didn't come along last week and this is your first time joining us for social media updates, it is a fast-paced session. This is Andy and I getting together, sharing in 1 hour all the news, insights, data reports that we read every month, so that in 1 hour we can help you, busy social media marketers, stay in the know. We don't want to overwhelm you by saying you need to do everything and you need to take on all these new features. It's for you to see what might work for you tomorrow or at some point in the future. I come at all of this from a social media consultant point of view. I work with clients, supporting them with their marketing activities and their social media plans and content. And I also deliver teaching and training in this area as well, and write books because, dare I say it, yeah, I'm in the middle of another one again. I am proper plural on this one now, a little bit crazy. Andy, are you going to do another one?
Not yet.
Not yet. That's better than the no.
Yeah, exactly. It was no. So yeah. Seeing how many that you managed to put out, I'll need to do another one at some point. But we'll get there. We'll get there. Some other priorities first. But anyway, I'm Andy. For my sins, I was one of the founders of a company called ContentCal, a social media technology platform, which became the fastest growing and most widely adopted social media platform in the UK, which was fun. So that took maybe 6 or 7 years to get to that stage, to that point that Adobe bought us, which was fun. And that's where I now work. And yeah, over the course of that journey, we scaled it from just 3 of us into a team of 60 and being used across the world. And we scaled it predominantly using social media, which you'd probably hope we did, considering it's a social platform. So I think Luan and I are both equally bullish on the opportunity that exists on social media when it's done right. Yeah. And that kind of is really the genesis of today and these sessions that we've been doing for the last, how long is it now, Luan? 4 years?
4 years. 4 years.
That's consistency for you. So this whole session is all about not overwhelming you and purely giving you the facts as to what's happening in the world of social, some of those macro shifts that are shaping the direction of social, as well as some of the more in the weeds feature updates. Don't feel for a moment, we say this every time, don't feel for a moment that you need to take an action on every single one of them, or any of them at all for that matter. This is just an opportunity, grab a cup of tea, sit back, and then feel like you're now on top of the world of social by the time we get to the end of it. But there is a lot of information coming your way. Anything else you'd add before we dive in?
No, just a thank you to those that are saying hello in the chat. It's always nice to see familiar names as well. So do say hello in the chat, share your own social media profiles.
Yes.
I think because it's early in the month and there was some US holiday, 4th, 5th of July, there's not quite so much this month. So we're not going to be trying to cram it in. So if you have got questions for us, pop them in the chat and we'll see if we can get to some Q&A today as well.
Definitely. Good call. Oh, yes. So if you want the slides, if you have to drop out because meetings, work, other priorities, go ahead, zap this QR code and we'll send you the slides in a couple of days following this. But yeah, if you want the slides, scan that and we'll get that to you. We'll also show that QR code at the end. Anyway, always mention this, but this will be the only time I mention this. If you need a free content planning and scheduling and organizational tool, everything we built at Content Cal, we've been building inside of Adobe Express. And the great thing about working for a massive company, it means you can turn a lot of your tech that you had to charge for because you needed to feed your family. Now we can make it for free. So I think it's the only totally free social media tool out there. So yeah, give it a try if you fancy. That's it. That's the end of the pitching. On to the good stuff. Right, let's start with the kind of macro shifts. Now, don't think for a moment just because there's been a change here at the top of the charts that Instagram or TikTok are, on a downward or upward trend. It really is just giving us an idea because this helps us understand future growth. Instagram's overtaken TikTok for the first time in many, many months as the most downloaded app across all app stores. Instagram have managed to reverse a lot of erosion that they faced as a result of TikTok's growth. And now they've done a wonderful job at kind of reversing that, growing their platform and still building out to more users. So there's still a lot of value that exists in Instagram and continues to exist. Just because, and also on the balance of that, just because TikTok dropped from 1 to 2 doesn't mean that it's going anywhere anytime soon. And these downloads just give us an idea because they don't necessarily mean that there's more people on the platform right now, but it means the future potential of the platform continues to grow. More apps, basically App Store downloads is the top of the funnel. So you expect to see more users grow over time. The interesting thing about TikTok, and the thing that still blows my mind, is that it's the top out of every single app in every app store. It's the top for consumer spend. That is wild to me. The fact that a social app drives more consumer spend through it than all of those other platforms, I find absolutely fascinating.
And it's not just spend within the platform, is it? We know that TikTok is driving spend in real life as well. You can't go into a bookstore now without a whole section that says TikTok made me buy it or BookTok or something as well. So it's having such an impact on retail.
100%. Yeah, totally agree, Luan. That the e-commerce potential of TikTok. And I think they're finally getting to the point of crossing the chasm, making like e-commerce work on the app. Instagram and Facebook couldn't really make shopping work. We were talking about this loads in like 2020, 2021, weren't we? Where it was all about shopping. They've rode back on all of that. TikTok couldn't make it first time around, and they have gone again at shopping really hard, and it seems to be working. UK still a bit of a lag behind like US, but you can start to see that people's behaviors and expectations on TikTok are changing, where it's becoming much more like direct response. I want to buy that product. So if you're in e-commerce, I would be all over it. If I was in e-commerce, would be my thought. Anything else before we move on?
I just think as a user, it's dangerous because it's so easy to spend money. And if you look at the patterns of the time of day when people tend to scroll on TikTok as well, it's quite late at night as well. And it is that I absolutely do it most weekends. It's like I'm scrolling, and I need that, and I'm going to go off and buy it. And it arrives on a Monday or Tuesday, and it's like, oh, did I do that? Whoops.
Definitely dangerous.
Insight into my world. Yeah.
Probably many other people like you too. This was very interesting, shared by Matt Navarra. Threads has an attention problem. If you look at what an average user spends in terms of their time spent per day on Threads compared to the other platforms, it is an order of magnitude lower. And that is very interesting. And that kind of jives with what I've just been hearing anecdotally about Threads users, where I've yet to hear from someone that really says, I use Threads because of this X, Y, Z. Threads is my go-to because of this reason. I still hear lots of people like, I use Threads, but I'm kind of doing this and that, experimenting, seeing how it goes. I see a lot less intention around Threads, just anecdotally. And I think that's reflected in what we're seeing from usage data, where people are like, okay, I'll check it, it's interesting, but it hasn't found that compelling hook. And we'll look at some other time spent data in the next slide. But even when you think like X has been in reverse for a while, X is still, 4 times higher in terms of time spent. And as we know, where attention goes, that's typically where engagement and reach are. And that also correlates with what I've been hearing from people that are kind of creators on Threads, where they're struggling to grow. So doesn't mean Threads is not worth the time and effort necessarily, but really, if you're thinking about where there is an opportunity for what you'd call attention arbitrage, where there's underpriced attention, like LinkedIn is a fantastic place for that right now. Great opportunity to get reach without cost. Threads is pretty low on that spectrum. That's my take, but what do you think, Luan?
No, I'm with you, because I mean, Threads has just had its first birthday on the 5th of July. I wrote a blog on that day around, you know, first birthday. Let's have a look at what's happened over the year, and they have done lots of development with adding in all the features that everyone said they wanted at the beginning. Of course, not all of those features, you know, still no DMing and things like that. So for me, and I think I put in the blog, you know, I'm still there lurking, and I think the attention problem, for me, I only tend to go there if I've read everything else. Stop shopping. No, seriously, but like almost like when I'm prompted within Instagram or Facebook, and you see a thread and you're like, oh, I need to see what the rest of it is. And I think, you know, they're doing a lot to drive people to it, but if they weren't doing that kind of cross-platform thing, I imagine the numbers would be even lower. But what I do think is interesting, what Meta are kind of doing in this area of, you and I talk a lot about, you know, nuance your content for different platforms, and don't cross post everything everywhere. And that seems to be what Meta are kind of encouraging you to do by prompting you to go there. Someone's just said, yeah, Threads feels like a summary of Instagram in terms of what people are posting and whinging about it. So I kind of liked the fact a year ago that it was a new space and everyone was starting from the same place, which, you know, everyone's got their own history with other platforms, how long they've been on it. But I still just don't think it's found its role yet.
No, I'd agree with that, definitely. Talking about time spent, and you couldn't talk about time spent without talking about TikTok, really. And whilst it's no surprise, because we've been sharing this for a long time, that TikTok owns attention, you know, for the reasons that we all know. Instagram has been fighting back, and more time is being spent. Instagram have, you know, we reported this for a while now, Instagram have been clawing back time spent, particularly with younger audiences. As I always say, I care a lot about these time spent metrics, because at a macro level, it really helps us understand which platforms have the biggest opportunity for organic reach. And typically, you know, Luan and I, we're always talking about, like, we're cheapskates. We don't want to pay to reach. So we've come from small businesses backgrounds, so we've got to try and punch above our weight. So we're always looking at platforms that can drive organic reach. So whilst Instagram is making up for lost ground, TikTok still owns that attention. And to that end, it means that engagement rates continue to be higher than any of the other platforms, for obvious reasons. More time on platform, more content, more opportunity to engage. Yeah. The bit that I also find very surprising here, final point, is that TikTok wins out for 45 to 54-year-olds, and it takes us to get to the 55 age bracket before Facebook takes over. That I thought was nuts. Didn't expect that.
I think it's really hard talking about age groups, isn't it? And where you sit, and, you know, not all age groups are within age groups are the same, but it's this perception, isn't it, that TikTok is only for the young people and the older people are on Facebook. And actually, there is obviously, you know, peaks and differences in the platforms, but it's about why people go to the platforms and what they're doing when they get there, and mindset that is as important as these kind of gender things as well. But it's nice to see a more even split appearing across the groups as well.
Exactly. Some AI pieces now. So we're going to look at AI from two perspectives, and obviously you and I, Luan, we did a whole piece on AI fairly recently. So go ahead and check that out if you want to go deep into AI and social. This is an interesting one where it's very easy now to churn out AI content, as we all know. Google are cottoning onto this, and naturally, a lot of generic AI generated content is just that. It's generic. It doesn't provide value for a user. So Instagram, social platforms on the mind. Google are clamping down on that. So they really want to incentivize against the use of AI generated content. So that's more just an FYI for everyone. If we're trying to rank and trying to to drive SEO volume through our businesses, which is always and continues to be important. We just need to be very mindful about our use of AI, making sure that it is always going to be created with the user in mind, as much value as possible. That's a note here. Anything else to add, Luan?
No, I think, we've been talking about AI, almost every month as these features come through. But what is interesting is how we are starting to see this search and social, again, something we've talked about coming through, and how that is also important, that we can't just put search in a bucket and social media in a bucket now, that, we're seeing things kind of across the two. And that's really important for us to understand. We have to look at the different channels and how they were working together.
Yeah, I agree. And this next update isn't necessarily it's a bit of a break from our norm as to it has to be feature updates. So I've broken the rules a little bit with this one, Luan, but I saw
what they're there for.
I thought it was too interesting not to share. I wanted to balance out, like, rather than saying AI is bad, it's not as binary as is it good or bad. This is a wonderful use of AI, and I thought it was very smart from Shake Shack, where this also demonstrates what we've been talking about for a while, which is the power of Reddit, where they've used this Reddit bot to analyze a bunch of subreddits to evaluate conversations around certain search terms, whether it's gourmet fast food, healthy alternatives to burger, that kind of stuff. So that then gave them the understanding of which subreddits contain most of the conversation that would be most relevant to their brand. So then that gave them the insights that they needed to make sure they run ads then into those subreddits where they had the highest propensity to talk about things that are most relevant to Shake Shack's offerings. Genius. Very simple, perfect use of AI about harnessing a whole bunch of information to create really relevant content and targeting it to the right people. And you can see that the impact that it drove. And that's where Reddit's been very hard to unlock from a business perspective. There's so much goodness on that, and there's also so much noise. So this is where AI can play a really good role of, like, distilling the signal from the noise and allowing us to create meaningful campaigns around it. So I liked that one. And also love these stats. I saw a big blog on this about, like, B2B impact in social media, especially for those many B2B businesses that are heavily sales driven. And it's always nice to see the impact of social media put into some numbers, because we all know it's there. We all know the impact of social media in B2B. This is Luan and I's heartland. But not often does it get the recognition it deserves. It's sometimes quite hard to see at a high level what the impact has been, especially in, like, sales driven deals. So some of these stats really stand out to me, but I've been talking a lot, so I'll let you kind of talk over this one.
Yeah, I think, benchmarks are always useful. People are always asking us for benchmarks, and, ideally I would say set your own and then try and improve on them. But to look at this kind of research is really important. And again, as Andy said, love the LinkedIn focus on this and the B2B. What I would say when I'm delivering training and I'm often asked, what results and what leads can I expect and things like that, it's not always about those hard metrics. And one thing that I talk about is, like, a pinch me moment as well. Do you get a connection request from, an idol in your industry that you kind of like, you have to screenshot it and send it to a friend? Do you get an invite to speak at an event that you kind of like, how have they found me? And this is happening. So it's thinking about what it means for you and the opportunities it generates as well. So, I love the percentages of leads and pipelines and, views and things like that. But I'm going to add, think about your pinch me moments as benchmarks in your journey as well.
I like that. Yeah. And that's such a good call out. And I think the thing we also need to try our best and get away from, especially if anyone's working in B2B, you'll get this. It's like, try and push back on any desire to, like, directly attribute social content to sales, because it just won't happen. It's just a falsification. But when you zoom out, look at a high level, when you can see the broader impact of things like this, the data points like this, because I always find this very useful when you go to executives that don't really understand or recognize the importance of social media and how it influences the brand and makes everything easier. I think this is some good stats around it, basically proving what we all know is true. Right,
features, there's some changes, there's some good stuff in here today as well. There's some really nice, sometimes we're a bit like, oh, did we really need that change? And sometimes it's like we get quite excited by a change as well. And I found a couple of these exciting today. I don't know about you. We haven't talked about them.
Go for it.
Not excited about this one. Meta will enable influencers to create AI versions of themselves. So Meta are obviously leaning into AI in many different ways, adding features, labeling, which we'll talk about in a minute. In the whole session that Andy and I did a couple of weeks ago, I'll pop a link in the session afterwards if you missed it. This creating AI versions of yourself. I think there's some pros to this, but there's also some authenticity challenges around it as well.
Yeah, I'm definitely conflicted on that one. I'd love to hear people's thoughts in the chat. So anyone listening into this, to get their take on the realities of this. Do we feel comfortable? There's clearly scaling opportunities here. Makes sense, right? But yeah, authenticity is we say that word all the time. So yeah, I'm mixed on it. Love to get this take.
Yeah. This is a nuance within AI that Meta have switched their AI labeling from made with AI to AI info. And apparently this was because of photographers kind of getting upset that their images are labeled as, made with AI when actually they use an AI tool to do some editing within the image as well. So it's a slight nuance, but, nuances become more and more important as, AI is increasingly being used. So AI info is our label now.
Interesting. And I wonder, this is only just a thought, I wonder if those labels of AI info over time, considering most content is AI driven, will that then become like sponsored posts where sometimes, basically no one clicks on Google ads anymore because you just go over the sponsored stuff and you just look for the organic results because you think they'll be more meaningful. I wonder if these AI info labels might be that version where you're just like, oh, it's just AI. Oh, something genuinely from Luan. I'm going to watch this.
Yeah.
So I wonder. That is purely just a thought right now, but we are entering a very interesting new territory in social. That is for sure.
It's a bit like stock library images, isn't it? You see the same people being used again and again. You skip past them. You're looking for original content, which does lead us in nicely to Instagram updates, because that is what Adam Missouri has been talking about, is original content. But do you want to talk about this one? Because this kind of is linking search and Instagram again, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. So I've often said one of the challenges of social is that it's a walled garden, but it's becoming less and less so that search and social, like you've just spoken about, Luan, is just becoming more tightly coupled. Yeah, I don't think this is necessarily game changing because it's Google Perspectives feature, which is there to bring in like news and timely content related to a search. Because there's only a limited amount of space here. Will it drive reach, etc.? Probably not. But if you're a business that's talking about timely content, or you're breaking news, for example, in your industry where news matters, then that's probably a really good signal that like news and timely content will be is going to be a good content strategy for you, because we now have an opportunity to have that content surfaced on Google too. So yeah, good opportunity.
Yeah. Embedding images in Instagram carousels. This is one of those. We've got a new feature. Some people want to embed images, whether it's screenshots or things like that. So I think it's interesting that they talk a lot about reels, but we do know that carousel format, the swiping through multiple images, is also really engaging content and performs well.
Definitely.
This is what we've been talking about the last couple of months, share rates, which is about sends. There was a brilliant podcast. Again, I'll pop a link in the chat if you haven't listened to it. Adam Missouri talking about how they are really encouraging, and the behaviors that they're seeing is people are sharing more content with their friends and now showing us this as data. A question for you, Andy, because I don't think you're a big Instagram user, but I was having a conversation over the last week of like, I think I'm doing this more now, and I don't know if I'm doing it more because I've read this data that this is what people do and I should be doing it, or I'm doing it naturally. Sometimes I'm quite torn by being told this is what everyone's doing, and I'm like, oh, okay, so that's what I should be doing, versus actually thinking about it more because of the data and the insights, that you're getting from it as well. I'm seeing more sharing on Instagram. And interestingly, I did a post a couple of weeks ago on LinkedIn and on Instagram story, and I had more engagement on my Instagram story than I did on LinkedIn in terms of messages and DMs, which is a real shift for me on that. So I don't know if my behavior is changing or if everyone else's behavior is changing because of seeing things like this.
Yeah, it is interesting. Anecdotally and through data, so much of LinkedIn consumption is shifting to DMs and stories, which makes you think I probably should do more stories actually, rather than post to reels all the time. But yeah, my focus is pretty one-dimensional, and just goes to show, like, even though we talk about this stuff, Luan and I are always changing.
Occasionally,
trying to. We don't do it all either. So yeah, whilst I've leaned heavily into reels, probably could do some more stories. But this share rate stuff is a really interesting one. So I'll expect to see lots more people trying to have that as a call to action to say, "Oh, share this with your friends," because that's going to drive growth.
But just on that, I think again the conversations I've been having of like they are leaning into their creators as well, who can create content that's shareable. From a particularly B2B, what kind of content that we can create that people want to share with their friends. I was working with some public sector, and it's like, oh, your recycling day is changing. There's only one person that I need to tell that our recycling day is changing, and I'll tell him rather than sharing an Instagram post because he sits next to me. It's kind. How can we think about B2B content that is shareable is very different from creator content that is shareable, and I think that presents us a bit of a challenge with this shift.
Yeah, I agree.
This one I do like. We collaborate. We've collaborated for 4 years. We're big fans and advocates of doing this for many different reasons. And Instagram have this collaboration feature, and now almost like being able to flag yourself as open to collaboration. I like this as well. It's making us think about it. And I think I also saw Missouri talk about in the past couple of days around being able to add collaboration after the post, because sometimes if you don't do it at the time, you can't do it in retrospect, but they are adding that in as well. So yeah, big fan of this opportunity.
Just makes it much easier to find those people that we want to work with. So if someone's open to it. So I love that. It's kind of like making influencer marketing accessible to everyone, right? And when we say like influencer marketing, we often don't mean like people like celebrity or hundreds of thousands of followers, just people that have the same mission or target audience as you, that you can add value to each other's audience with. And you probably know this already, but it's worthwhile calling it out. When you collaborate with someone, let's take Instagram, for example, that single message will go in both of your feeds. So there is nothing better to extend the reach of your content than doing that. Quite frankly, Anna, I don't like to think in binary black or white terms, but it's very simple, that one. If you want to grow faster, get yourself in other people's feeds. So this is why we're big fans.
Yeah. I'm gonna let you like this one.
Oh yeah, because I did a happy dance for this. I've long hated, maybe because I'm old and miserable, I don't know, but like maybe I just hate like social media hacks or do this thing because this will drive growth. I hate compromising the message or the content based on just a platform requirement or what we feel we should do. And I think hashtags is one of those things. It creates horrible looking posts. It doesn't add value to people. It's basically spamming and very hacky. So I've always hated like loading 25 hashtags, putting hashtags in comments. Instagram already said don't put hashtags in comments, just doesn't do anything. Having 25 hashtags actually is a detriment to your post. Posts perform better with 3 to 5. Data's always shared that. And now Insta are basically forcing people's hand. They've been sharing it for a while, but now they're trying to like force that behavior by saying you're not adding anymore. Not everyone has that limitation. I don't know when they're going to make it completely, when they're going to mandate it, but it just goes to show, I think for us that if we're ever trying to find a way to hack hashtags are very simple. Just choose relevant ones and that's it. Don't need to worry about it. So
They're so misunderstood. You know, it's crazy in 2024. Again, maybe old and skeptical. We've been doing this for a long time, but it just feels they're so misunderstood and lead to confusion. And, you know, what is a hashtag and what should a hashtag be? And do I need to apply to get a hashtag? I'm still getting that question as well in 2024. So I'm, you know, I am, you know, I always say I do advocate using hashtags because I'm kind of like, why not? But keep them focused and do a bit of research around them and see it from this will help you get discovered. This is about search point of view.
Exactly. But we also know, like, you know, how often anyone on this call, how often does anyone like search for a hashtag? If you're looking casually through Insta, that's a very different way of using a platform by deliberately saying, oh, I want to find out anything that's related to Jen's trends. So that makes sense because that's around Jen's community. So I get the use of that, and it connects content together really well. So there is a purpose. But the reality is, if we're most of the time on social, we're looking to get discovered, to grow our awareness. Hashtags have very little impact on that, and well-chosen hashtags won't save a badly formatted and badly organized and badly done post, right? Content first. Hashtags are just a cherry on top, basically. That's where I look at it. Sorry, I'm going to soapbox again.
My turn.
Really my trigger word.
Well, you know, I think, you know, algorithms is my trigger word of like, you know, we're writing for people, we're communicating with humans. Let's stop trying to do these hacks and overthinking things and just be social on social media and use our time wisely. This was an interesting update. Again, Adam Mazuri, you've got to follow him because he's sharing what's happening in the feeds. Someone asked him if Instagram would focus more on long form video in the future, and the answer is no. They are all about short form content, and I think that's good to know because we keep seeing, oh, experiment with this, experiment with that, leaning into reels. The fact that they're saying short form, which I think their definition is 90 seconds or less, leaning into, it's good to have some answers.
Definitely, I like that.
This is a feature I'm not sure of. I spotted this one just yesterday around Instagram allowing you to add multiple audio tracks to reels, mixing audio up to 20 tracks. I don't know anyone that has, well, I certainly don't have the musical knowledge to be able to find 20 audio tracks. I struggle with one or two sometimes, but the time to add that many tracks to your reels, I'm sure some people will be doing it, if that's where their direction takes them, but not quite sure why we've got that one.
Yeah, agreed.
Reels best practice tips. I can't see this on my screen. Andy, can you read them out? This is directly from the platform, some top tips. We'll share the slides so that you can see them more clearly.
Oh yeah, seems clear on my side. How
I've got it on a smaller screen.
Oh, never mind. All right, cool. So this is in the Instagram business profile and the creator profile. So basically best practice tips. Now, none of these are hugely surprising to anyone, or they shouldn't be. And they're just kind of solid guidance and really speaks to the points that you were just making, Luan. But I wanted to put them here today because sometimes it's just nice, good, like reminder, just to ground ourselves in reality. It's not as complex as sometimes it seems. So this is sensible. So this first one says, get ready to grow with reels, make creating reels part of your routine, get it, focus on deeper engagement. We've already spoken about like, that means share rates, that means comments, that means people watching to the end of your video. Be as relatable as possible. Again, this is all about you, and it's all about you sharing your unique views and perspectives with the world. And that really goes kind of against what we've just been talking about related to AI. The bit in the middle is the interesting stuff, which is under the category of create content that clicks with people. Make your first 3 seconds count. Naturally, your hook is everything. A lot of this is related. This is Reels best practice, just FYI, not just general Instagram. So make your first 3 seconds count. We all know that. Check your timing. 30 to 60 seconds is the timing that Reels perform best within. You can go up to 90. Most of my videos are 90 anyway, because I'm a bit verbose. But yeah, if you can do 30 to 60, then more the better. Number 3, use only relevant hashtags. I think we've covered that one enough. Get that. try some trending audio. And oftentimes I've seen a lot of people just put in trending track, put the volume to 0 if it's like a more of a voiceover thing. So trending sounds is probably the only thing where we are like making a nod towards what Instagram want rather than it necessarily benefiting the content itself. And then keep it high res. So that all of it just makes general sense. All right. So very sensible stuff. None of this is hacky or, you know, you got to post at 3:05 a.m. on a Friday to get forget that nonsense. Just focus on like the practical realities, and the story you tell matters more than anything else. So that's the take. Facebook.
Love testing. We always talk about testing things. You've always got to keep testing and learning. So Facebook adding more functionality. And I think, again, this is about reels, isn't it? Like being able to A/B test your reels. As a reminder, test one thing at a time, one variable at a time, so you can see what the difference is. You should always be testing.
Yeah, I love that. And this applies for organic content, which is new. And that's really interesting. So if, in case you can't see this screenshot here, you can test your caption and your thumbnail, which we both know have a big impact to your content discovery. So I love that. It's basically going to choose the winner and just put the winner out in the feed. So what a beautiful, that's a very nice thing that Facebook will do for us. Love that.
Broadcast channels, we've mentioned these before. These are rolling out on Facebook now. If you have 10,000 or more page followers, I do know that some accounts have literally seen this in the past couple of days. This broadcast channel is that kind of like 1 to many, or maybe 2 or 3 to many, because you can invite people to join your broadcast channel. And it's kind of like town hall conversations or announcements to your customers, or conversations around events, maybe if people are participating in something. So quite a fan of this. This kind of does support the shift towards people having more private, small group conversations. So looking forward to seeing people do this well, rather than just because, oh, look, shiny new feature, I'll set up a broadcast channel. Something to watch and consider.
I like that. Did you mention it's only limited for those with 10,000 followers?
10K. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Perfect.
This is sorry, a question just caught my eye in the chat. Is the auto A/B testing only relevant for Facebook Reels? That feature is Reels focused, but there is A/B testing within Business Manager for paid content, and I'm sure it will be available in other areas soon. Back to this one. This auto resharing, again, this is something I mentioned earlier about this kind of cross-posting. We should be nuancing in 2024, not doing one post that fits everywhere, but absolutely, I'm seeing it in the app. Whenever you're doing anything on a Meta app, it's kind of inviting you to reshare it elsewhere. So resharing your reels as stories. Some people may wish to do this, some may not. Inviting collaborators, so on a desktop. So it's not often that we're seeing desktop features versus mobile app features now, but again, being able to invite your collaborators if you're a desktop user, that's quite useful, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
These are the ones I'm excited about, particularly this one. So LinkedIn have added a couple of advertising opportunities recently, which are less about creating ads and supporting your organic content with some budget to get more reach. And LinkedIn are now allowing you to do that if you have a newsletter. This is currently only available for newsletters run from a company page, not from a personal profile, but now being able to kind of put some budget behind that to get some additional reach, views, new subscribers. I'm a fan of this one. I'm looking forward to testing it.
You have some clients with LinkedIn newsletters, don't you?
Yeah, so I work with some clients where we repurpose their email newsletters. So it may go out to an email list, and a few days later we repurpose it. Sometimes it's a straight cut and paste. Sometimes it's, you know, take a story out, put a story in to build an audience. I think if you're going to sponsor them, you might want to adjust your newsletter for a cold or warmer audience rather than your existing list. But for me, it's all about repurposing. If I've done it in email, why not pop it on LinkedIn?
That makes sense. So had you seen some reasonable results then from LinkedIn newsletters?
Yes, because they go straight into people's inboxes, they get subscribers. You can then, you know who's subscribing, so you can connect with them, and it's about views. And honestly, if you've done all the work in an email marketing piece of software, it's a coffee break job to copy and paste it into LinkedIn. So why not do it?
Yeah, love that.
And this is also this new Accelerate AI feature within LinkedIn Campaign Manager. I've tested this a little bit, experimenting, not run any ads from it yet, but this is where you, in LinkedIn Campaign Manager, you can start to use AI to build your campaigns. So instead of going in and building your target audiences, you can fill in a box and tell LinkedIn, this is my audience, and this is what I'm doing, and this is my product, and this is my website page that I'm driving you to, and it will help you build the campaign. So early, starting to roll out, could potentially be useful. I'm liking that LinkedIn are offering us ad features that are potentially more useful for comms people that are repurposing, rather than having to be kind of ad creatives and ad experts.
Yeah, and I wonder if that'll actually unlock my ability to do LinkedIn advertising, of which I've never succeeded in. So I'm looking forward to that.
X is done a few things, and again, we're probably not surprised. Video as being the growth driver on X. Elon Musk announced at the beginning of the year in his January town hall, this is going to be a video platform. I was a little bit skeptical about this because it's not a place I go for video content. Don't think I necessarily see a lot of video content, but I think it's quite interesting that, people are shifting that way. And there is conversations, I don't know what you're having, Andy, around, we've stopped using X so much, we're not on there, but actually other people are still using it and there is still activity going on. So it's still going.
It's still 4 times more highly used than Threads, as we know. So
yeah, exactly.
Like with anything, it's not binary. It's not like, is it dead or is it alive? But they are going to be trying to push video quite heavily. So if you've got an audience on X and you're still okay with, from a brand reputation perspective, being on X, then there is opportunities here, especially with an increase in video views like that.
Yeah,
that might present an opportunity. So if you feel comfortable, you can try it. Yeah. TikTok. All right. So they have also, similar to what we shared with Instagram, they've come up with some best practices, which they've got in the kind of creator studio area of the platform to help people get better on TikTok. And I wanted to come up with, I wanted to share this because whilst it's not necessarily an update, I think there was some genuinely useful guidance. So they look at it in 3 ways as to helping people be better on the platform, or how to be braver and how to stand out more on TikTok. And given the attention that is on TikTok right now, there's still a lot of opportunity. So one is piquing curiosity. Like what they say here, what are the hyper unique areas of your business that you can shine a light on? How can you take down that corporate veil and, really show the real you or the real business behind it? And that's where creators and businesses on TikTok are succeeding, where they're just seeing a completely other perspective of the business. It's quite a different approach. And storytelling unhinged, as they call it. And what we mean by that is, how can we tell a story in a new and interesting way? Take, for example, what's become very popular on TikTok right now is like the street style interview, where people are going up to the street, interviewing folk around their perspectives on a certain thing. I can see that working really well for any stage of business or any type of business. And whilst some brands are probably uncomfortable with that level of kind of rawness to content, I think that's why content on TikTok and brand content that works on TikTok is raw. It is real. Yes, it still doesn't mean it's shot in lo-fi, it's shot in high quality, but it's raw, real human reactions. And I think that's one of the beauties of the platforms. And typically, I think in the dawn of it becoming so much easier just to create pretty generic content, that's the stuff that's really going to stand out. Unique human perspectives, like genuine reactions to stuff. That's what people are buying into. And then bridging the trust gap, which relates predominantly to, do you feel like you're creating, or does it feel like this brand is creating for this platform? Does it feel TikTok? Are they using kind of native TikTok terminology, that kind of stuff? does it basically feel like it's been repurposed from somewhere else, or does it feel like it fits the platform? So I don't know, Luan, do you have any views on that kind of stuff? It's good, make you feel uncomfortable, do you think it's relevant?
No, I love this screenshot because I think some people are still struggling with TikTok and where it fits, and they're either, you know, all into it and building it. I work with a lot of universities, so it, you know, it's working for them, versus some B2Bs are finding it a bit harder, like what role can this play and where can it work? So there's some words in this screen that are great, you know, be brave, curiosity, storytelling, bridging the trust gap. And one area that I'm looking at in particular with TikTok is the whole kind of like humanizing your business, go behind the scenes. And I'm doing a lot of work, was at a big conference a couple of months ago for HR, and talking to HR leaders around, if you want to recruit in the future, you want to attract Gen Z and even Gen Alpha in 5 years' time, they are on this platform and they want to know what it's like to work in your organization and who they're going to work with. So I think we're going to see some shifts as we do once things become established and brands move in. So I think encouraging us to think a bit differently about how TikTok can play a role within our business, I think this is a great piece.
Yeah, definitely aligned with that. Local search on TikTok's just got even more powerful. So now we've got categories of food and drink, things to do, etc. We've always had location tags on TikTok, which you'll be familiar with for other platforms. But if you're a kind of small business or more locally orientated, and especially if you're in more of a B2C type of category, then local search is going to be really powerful. And these new categories, because, you know, a lot of discovery is shifting to TikTok. We've talked about the gradual blending of search and social, and it's just becoming one of the same. People not necessarily just going to social just to be entertained, but also for intentional discovery orientated activity, like searching what's on in Boston in this example. So I think this is a really important thing for local SEO. Gen AI, we're going to talk about that. So AI chatbot called Genie, which is all about finding or helping people find and discover new content and new experiences. So again, this is going to change discovery on TikTok, and it's also going to change how businesses will be found. And I think I have no idea where this will go, but it's going to be fascinating finding out. But just go to China. I think the kind of TLDR here is that like discovery is very much happening on TikTok of businesses, typically those in more kind of B2C capacities, but B2B too. And TikTok are very much leaning into that, where, you know, search is increasingly becoming TikTok first. I find that fascinating. Talking about repurposing that you were speaking about before, they're finding ways that people can easily repurpose content. So there are TikTok stories. I've never actually done one, to be honest, and I'm curious to know anyone that's kind of seeing success from TikTok stories. But in case you ever want to do one, you can add your comments to posts as a story too. So a nice way of kind of repurposing that. Quite like that approach. You can now remove the watermark, which I think is they've done
what everyone's been waiting for.
Yeah, lots have been waiting for this. But what I find fascinating is, like, you could save it with a watermark, or you can post it and then you can have your watermark removed. And I was like, that's pretty smart, to be honest. So it's a way of like incentivizing people to be active on TikTok, and then the reward for that is like, hey, now you can go put it. Yeah. So again, repurposing, very important, especially when video is like the go-to for each of these platforms. We can now do a custom thumbnail in TikTok. We do it directly on the app. Very, very similar to custom thumbnails for Reels as well. Thumbnails, very important. You know, we've seen lots of data on that. Particularly that data relates to YouTube, but the impact of thumbnails, we've seen the same data on Facebook too, but the impact of thumbnails on video views is absolutely huge. So I think this is a very important one. Now, talk about research. This isn't anything to do with my popular content. I just because my content is not that popular. So if you're ever researching someone or a brand or business and you're thinking, oh, I'd love to get some inspo as to how I could create some TikTok content, now you can just click on a profile and they've got this new popular tab. You only used to see latest. So looking at popular, obviously serves you the stuff that worked well. And it was actually a nice reminder for myself, because I clicked on that. I was like, oh, I used to do these kind of like teardowns of stuff. Like, I stopped doing those and they perform really well. So that was a nice reminder for me to pick up an old content theme that I dropped. And then the rest, we're nearly there. Do you want to talk about this one, Luan? Actually, could you pop this one in?
Yeah, this was one. It was a headline I saw. I think it was on TechCrunch around Spotify adding in new features and starting to say it's no longer a streaming app; it's a social network because of commenting, which I guess is a bit like the YouTube commenting as well. But interesting that was a headline. So again, what is a social media network? What isn't a social media network? Interaction, conversation.
Definitely. We've spoken about Threads already. They've hit 175 million users. I probably should have put the slide right at the beginning, but we already know there's pros and cons to that. Talking of Threads, they've integrated more deeply with the Fediverse, which sounds all scientific and futuristic. But the reality, all it means is that it just works with other platforms like Mastodon, for example. So now your posts in Threads go across multiple different platforms if you want them to, that are not owned by Meta, and replies can also be responded to directly in Threads. So it's kind of the future of social media as like Jack Dorsey, the founder of Twitter, had seen it. And this was always the idea, but it feels to me like it's cool and it's noble and it makes sense. But the lift is so big still that it takes for general users, for general people to get on board with something like this. It's just a bit too niche right now. There are certain communities that are all over these kind of slightly smaller niche platforms like Blue Sky, Mastodon, thinking about the Fediverse, a lot of like Web3, crypto, that kind of stuff. If you're in those spaces, there's a lot of that there. But general for most of us and the businesses that we do, this is probably more something that, it's interesting, keep in the back of our minds, but probably don't need to take any action on.
Yeah.
There's some other interesting Threads insights as well. So, because I've been trying to pay attention to this, why are people using Threads and what they're using it for? And there was a big study that happened around it. It still didn't really tell us, but this is probably the three most interesting things. Entertainment related news on Threads, music, food and fashion hot topics. I think that's basically the same as all of social media, to be honest. So this points to how Meta are trying to angle the app, shifting away from news and politics. So whilst it's very noble that they want to move away from news and politics, it is also directly impacted how interesting that platform is. So I imagine they'll probably pivot on that again at some point. This was interesting though. 63% of Threads posts are text only, and I think that's a real differentiator of Threads, and that's why it's the world's a better place for its existence, because for those that want to communicate in text only, it works well for that. And voice notes are very popular with younger audiences too, which I think we know this in other platforms too. But that's popular in Threads as well. I don't know if you've got any takes on this.
Yeah, I read this, and it was the 1 in 4 posts are text only was quite a shift, because that's the original Twitter, isn't it? It was short text only, and then it was adding images to everything. So interesting that people have kind of gone back to that. I'm just going to say I'm not a fan of voice notes because it takes me more effort to listen to them. So please don't voice note me. I won't listen.
I delete that WhatsApp to you. Cool. So public board sharing for Pinterest. If anyone's on Pinterest, this feature wouldn't make you use Pinterest if you didn't use it already, but you can now share your boards publicly so people can look at it without logging in. So it's a nice way of like sharing the things that make you, and they've built this for sharing across other social platforms. So this can be a good way across other social platforms to grow your Pinterest following, if that's an interest to you. Some other tools for YouTube Shorts. YouTube Shorts continues to grow at a rapid rate. I'm spending a lot of time on YouTube Shorts at the moment trying to evaluate whether there's the same level of like excitement I often talk about. Does it result in growth? So I will report back on this. But anyway, right now you can select a layout, so you can easily take your long form content into shorts, so you can reorientate the layout, use a bit of AI on that. So that's really useful for repurposing. That word repurposing again. We've now got more control over like text overlays. We've now got automatic subtitles, which you'd expect. We've also got collab features baked into it too. So again, how important that collab is across multiple different channels. YouTube is still on a huge growth trajectory, still the second highest used social media platform on earth. So there's still a lot of potential here, and I still see a huge amount of potential, certainly for like more kind of B2B brands. So yeah, and that's it. We made it, and we're not rushing. We've got like 5 minutes to spare.
Wow.
Yeah. The summaries, I think I've spoken a lot about this already. Reposting is actually being incentivized from the apps right now. Like TikTok wants you to get rid of the watermark and share it elsewhere. Meta is desperate for you to share your Facebook stories to Reels and vice versa, and to Instagram posts to Threads. Repurposing is everywhere. Same with what we've just seen with YouTube too. So I think that's really important for us, where we're all time poor, like creating the kind of longer form pieces of content, cutting them up into different takes, and then repurposing them in different formats across different channels. We've spoken lots about AI, the opportunities, the challenges we're going to see. And of course, I think we've waxed lyrical enough about collabs too. So yeah, there are your takeaways. But anything else you would add to this before we close out today, or go to any questions?
I think the other thing we've talked about quite a lot is repurposing content as well. So I think that's one for people to think about. But I've written a note. I'm about to go and switch my collab notifications open on Instagram. So I think there's always like some quick things and some bigger things within this around the new features and the data that, hopefully just stimulates some thinking. All I want to say is, again, thank you to those of you that watch it live. Thank you to those of you that watch it on playback afterwards. The recording is always available. There is a playlist of over 4 years of this stuff now, if anyone does want any more. And if you want to listen to us next month when we're not doing a live session, you can still find our recordings. Our next session is going to be the 19th of September, after the holiday period. If you are on holiday, I hope you have a good one, or have a break, whatever people are up to over the summer, that I think is now returning weather-wise. But yeah, thank you for watching. Again, thank you for those that we met last week. Andy and I have got some other plans up our sleeve to meet in real life, as well as doing this on screen. So we really appreciate everyone that gets involved.
Agreed with that. And if you want to stay up to date with get the slides, and then subscribe to our updates, then there's the QR code in front of you, and I echo everything you just said, Luan. Thank you very much for spending a bit of time with us again. Always appreciated.
Yeah. See you
soon. Hope you found it useful, and see you soon. Bye bye.